All right, welcome. Today we're going to tackle one of psychology's biggest ideas, classical conditioning. It's a huge part of behaviorism, and our goal here is to make it so simple and clear that you'll be all set to ace that exam. Think about it, right? Why does that happen? Well, the answer is all wrapped up in this powerful discovery made over a century ago about how our brains learn to connect things automatically. This stuff is happening all around us all the time, and we're about to show you exactly how. So, where does this all start? Well, funny enough, it wasn't in a psychology lab. Our story begins with a Nobel Prize-winning physiologist, a guy named Ivan Pavlov, and you guessed it, some very hungry dogs. So you've got this guy, Pavlov, and his main job, his whole focus, was studying the digestive system. He was carefully measuring how much dogs salivate when they get their food. But right in the middle of all this super serious research, he noticed something odd. Something that had nothing to do with digestion. Now, instead of just brushing this off as a weird fluke, Pavlov had this huge aha moment. He realized he'd stumbled upon a really basic form of learning. The dogs were learning to associate the sound of footsteps with the food that was coming. This accidental discovery was about to change everything. Okay, so to really get a grip on what he was seeing, Pavlov developed some very specific terms. And for your test, you absolutely need to know these. The best way to think about it is like a simple formula. So let's break down the parts. First, let's talk about the unconditioned stuff. That's just a fancy way of saying unlearned or natural. The unconditioned stimulus, or UCS, is the thing that automatically triggers a reflex. For Pavlov's dogs, that was the food. No learning needed there. And that natural reflex it triggers? Well, that's the unconditioned response, or UCR. The dog doesn't have to learn to salivate when it sees food, it just happens. It's built in. So the UCS leads to the UCR. Simple as that. Okay, so now Pavlov brings in something new, a neutral stimulus, or NS. And neutral is the key word. At the beginning, this stimulus means absolutely nothing to the dog. It's just background noise, like ringing a bell. By itself, it doesn't make the dog salivate. Okay, this slide right here, this is the whole game. This three-step process is the absolute heart of classical conditioning. So, step one, before anything happens, the bell is neutral, means nothing. The food makes the dog drool, which is natural. Step two is the learning phase. Pavlov rings the bell, then immediately gives the dog food, over and over. Bell, then food, bell, then food. And then, step three, after all that pairing, the magic happens. The bell, all by itself, now makes the dog salivate. The bell has gone from being neutral to being a conditioned stimulus, and the drooling is now a conditioned response. That neutral thing has become powerful just through association. So you might be wondering, once an association is learned, is it just locked in forever? Well, not exactly. Pavlov and others found there are a few key rules that explain how these connections can get stronger, weaker, or even change. Let's break down these three big ideas. First, you've got extinction. If you keep ringing the bell but you stop bringing the food, eventually the dog stops salivating. The response fades. But, and this is cool, it's not totally gone. That leads to spontaneous recovery. After a break, if you're ringing the bell again, the dog might suddenly start salivating. The response just pops back up. And finally, higher order conditioning. This is where you can take the bell, which is now a powerful conditioned stimulus, and use it to condition something else, like a flashing light, without ever using the food again. Now, this is a super important distinction, especially for an exam. Generalization is when the dog responds to things that are similar to the original bell, like maybe a doorbell. Discrimination is the opposite. It's learning to tell the difference and only responding to that one specific bell. And this idea of generalization is really, really important when we start talking about human emotions, especially fear. So, of course, this isn't just about dogs drooling. A psychologist named John B. Watson wanted to see if these exact same principles could be used to condition emotions in people. And that leads us to one of psychology's most famous and, frankly, most ethically problematic experiments, the Little Albert study. So here's what they did. They took a 9-month-old baby, Little Albert, and showed him a white rat. At first, he wasn't scared at all. The rat was a neutral stimulus. But then every time Albert reached for the rat, Watson would sneak up behind him and bang a steel bar with a hammer, a terrifyingly loud noise. Pretty soon, just the sight of the rat alone was enough to make Albert cry. The rat had become a conditioned stimulus for fear. And just like we talked about, that fear generalized to other fuzzy white things, a rabbit, a fur coat, even a Santa Claus mask. Okay, so I know what you might be thinking. Salivating dogs, old-timey experiments. What does this have to do with me? Well, pretty much everything. Let's fire off a few real-world examples of how this is shaping your life every single day. Phobias are a textbook example of this. You have one really bad experience in an elevator, which was previously a totally neutral thing. That scary experience gets paired with elevators, and bam, a conditioned fear response is born. But here's the cool part. If a fear can be learned this way, it can also be unlearned. Therapies like systematic desensitization use these same principles. They work to pair that feared thing with a new positive response, like deep relaxation, basically overwriting the old fear. It's a powerful tool for healing. Okay, advertising. This is where you see classical conditioning every single day. Brands take their product, which is just a neutral stimulus, and they pair it with something you already feel good about. A hit song, a beloved celebrity, a happy family. The goal? To make you transfer those good feelings onto their product. It's incredibly effective. And this applies to more serious things too, like addiction. This is a huge reason why recovery can be so tough. Cues in the environment, certain people, specific places that were associated with drug use can become conditioned stimuli that trigger powerful physical cravings even years later. You know, this quote really nails it. When you boil it all down, from Pavlov's dogs to your favorite Super Bowl commercial, the fundamental idea is the same. Our experiences create these powerful automatic associations that shape how we respond to the world. So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you know how it works, what are the invisible strings in your life? That smell that instantly makes you feel happy and nostalgic? That specific ringtone that makes your stomach clench? That's not random. That's classical conditioning at work.